Maid's daughter spoke up about the wrong medicine. A fortune nearly vanished. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. In a mansion that seemed more like a palace, everything was pristine, untouched, and perfect. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceilings, their lights sparkling like diamonds as it reflected off the polished marble floors. The air smelled faintly of expensive perfume, and the faint hum of the air conditioning system was the only sound that could be heard, besides the occasional murmur of distant conversations. This was the world of the Vance family, a world of immense wealth, power, and influence. But behind the high gates, in the shadows, lived Lily, a 12-year-old girl who worked as a maid's daughter. Unlike the elegant surroundings of the Vance estate, her life was a stark contrast. She lived in a small room in the servants' quarters, wearing hand-me-down clothes, always told to stay out of sight, and never to speak unless spoken to. No one noticed her. No one cared about her opinions. To them, she was invisible. The Vance family had everything: riches, status, and luxury. But what they didn't have was the kindness and empathy that Lily had in abundance. Every day, she would go about her chores quietly, keeping her head down, cleaning the mansion that the Vances called home. Her mother worked tirelessly as a housekeeper, and Lily followed in her footsteps, doing what she was told, keeping to herself. But one day, everything was about to change. It started as a normal afternoon. Lily was dusting the library when she overheard a conversation between Mr. Vance, the patriarch of the family, and his wife, Veronica. The words were casual at first, about business, about meetings, but then, Mr. Vance mentioned something about a new prescription for his wife's health. Veronica had been ill for some time, and the doctors had prescribed new medication to help with her condition. But as the conversation continued, Lily heard something that made her stop in her tracks. She recognized the name of the medication. It wasn't right. It wasn't the one her mother had mentioned before. The medication was not meant for someone with Veronica's condition. It was an expensive drug, yes, but it was not the correct treatment. Lily's heart raced as she thought about what to do. She was just a maid's daughter. Who would believe her? Who would listen to her? But deep down, she knew she couldn't stay silent. She had to speak up, even if it meant risking everything. So, with trembling hands and a voice that barely rose above a whisper, she approached Veronica as she sat in the living room, preparing to take her next dose. "Excuse me, Mrs. Vance," Lily said softly. Veronica looked up, her expression one of mild surprise. "Yes, dear," she replied, her voice cold and distant. Lily took a deep breath and blurted out, "That isn't the right medicine. It's for someone else, not for you." For a moment, there was silence. Veronica stared at her, not sure whether to laugh or to scold her. But then, something in Lily's eyes made her pause. The girl seemed so certain. And that's when it happened. A fortune nearly vanished, and a secret, dangerous mistake was uncovered. Mrs. Vance's eyes widened as Lily spoke, her voice trembling but filled with certainty. The silence in the room grew heavier, like a thick fog, as Veronica slowly placed the pill bottle down on the table. For a brief moment, the sound of her breath was the only thing that could be heard, and then, finally, she broke the silence. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice strained. Lily, her heart pounding in her chest, repeated herself, her words barely above a whisper. "That isn't the right medicine for you. I think it's meant for someone else." Veronica's expression shifted, disbelief mixed with a flicker of anger. "You're just a maid's daughter. What do you know about medicine?" she snapped. Lily's cheeks flushed with shame, but she refused to back down. I've seen it before. My mother always talked about what's needed for people like you, and that's not it. It's wrong. Please, don't take it." Veronica stood still, her eyes locked on Lily's face. For a second, there was a long, uncomfortable pause, and then she slowly turned away, her lips pressed into a tight line. "I'll speak to the doctor. Don't speak of this again," she muttered, waving her hand dismissively as she walked out of the room, leaving Lily standing there, a mixture of relief and anxiety flooding her chest. Little did she know, Her warning was about to set off a chain of events that no one could have anticipated. The next morning, as Veronica was about to take another dose of the same medicine, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Vance, still somewhat skeptical of the girl's words, answered the door to find a courier delivering a letter from her doctor. Her eyes scanned the paper quickly, her brow furrowing in confusion. It seemed that there had been a mix-up at the pharmacy. The medication she had been prescribed was not meant for her condition. In fact, the medication she had been taking was meant for someone entirely different. The realization hit Veronica like a freight train. She immediately rushed to find her husband, panic creeping into her voice. "Thomas, you won't believe this. That medication, it was the wrong one. Lily, she was right." Thomas, always quick to dismiss anything that didn't fit his usual narrative, froze when he heard the news. The gravity of the mistake settled in as he realized how close he had come to losing everything. Veronica and Thomas, shaken by the enormity of the error, realized just how fortunate they were that Lily had spoken up when she did. If the medication had continued to be taken, it could have led to severe complications, even potentially fatal ones. As they sat down to process what had just happened, both of them looked at each other in disbelief. "What else don't we know?" Thomas muttered under his breath, his mind racing. Veronica nodded slowly, the weight of the situation finally sinking in. They had been living in a world of luxury, but in that moment, they understood just how fragile it all was. Their fortune, their lives, were not as secure as they once believed. Lily, the quiet, invisible girl who had been overlooked and dismissed, had just saved them all, and they had no idea how much they owed her. Mrs. Vance stood frozen for a moment, the letter from the doctor still clutched in her hand. She had just learned the truth, and the weight of the discovery was almost unbearable. How had they been so blind? How had they trusted a doctor who could make such a catastrophic mistake? Her mind raced as she replayed Lily's words from the day before. The maid's daughter had saved her life. Her family's fortune was on the line. The thought of what could have happened made her feel sick to her stomach. She quickly turned to Thomas, who was pacing back and forth in the living room. His face was pale, and his usual confidence had been replaced by an unsettling sense of guilt. "We need to do something," he said, his voice tight with anxiety. Veronica nodded, her hands trembling. "Lily was right," she whispered. "If we hadn't caught this, we could have lost everything." Thomas stopped pacing and looked at her, his expression dark. "I know. I've never been more scared in my life." The couple stood in silence for a long moment, both of them trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened. But then, something shifted in Thomas. He turned to Veronica, his eyes hardening with resolve. "We owe that girl everything. If she hadn't said anything, we'd be in a very different position right now. We need to make it right." Veronica looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" Thomas straightened his back and began walking toward the door. "I'm going to find Lily. I'm going to thank her. We need to show her that her courage didn't go unnoticed." Veronica hesitated, but then nodded. "You're right. We have to do something for her." As Thomas left the room, Veronica sat down on the couch, her mind still racing. She thought about Lily, the quiet girl who had always kept to herself, never asking for anything. Lily was so young, yet she had the wisdom and bravery to speak up when no one else would. Veronica felt a deep sense of gratitude for the girl who had saved them, but also guilt. She had spent so much time in her own world of luxury that she hadn't noticed the people around her. Now, she was going to make things right. Meanwhile, Lily was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters, trying to focus on her work and block out the turmoil she felt inside. She had never meant for things to escalate like this. She had only spoken up because she knew something was wrong, but now, everything was changing. Her life was about to take a turn she never expected. As she stood there, lost in her thoughts, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around and saw Thomas standing in the doorway, looking at her with a mix of admiration and gratitude. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Thomas broke the silence. "Lily," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "I want to thank you. You saved my wife's life. You saved our entire family. We owe you everything." Lily blinked, unsure how to respond. She had never imagined that someone like Thomas Vance, a billionaire who seemed so far above her, would ever thank her. But there he was, standing before her with a look of sincerity in his eyes. I didn't do anything special," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to help." Thomas shook his head. What you did was extraordinary. You spoke up when no one else would. You showed incredible courage. We can't just let that go unnoticed." He paused, looking at her with a deep sense of respect. "We want to do something for you, Lily. You deserve more than just thanks." Lily's heart raced. She had never expected anything in return for her actions, but now, the Van Cess were offering her something she could never have dreamed of. She felt overwhelmed with emotion, but all she could do was nod, unsure of what to say next. For the first time in her life, Lily felt seen, truly seen, by someone who had the power to change her future. Ivy stood in front of the large windows, looking out over the sprawling gardens of the Vance estate. The evening sun cast long shadows over the well-kept lawns, and for a moment, she felt as if she was living in a dream. The events of the past few days had changed everything for her, and as she stood there, lost in thought, she couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led her here. Just days ago, she had been a quiet, invisible girl, cleaning the halls of a mansion that wasn't hers. Now, she had the undivided attention of the people who had once ignored her, and for the first time, she felt like her voice had meaning. It wasn't just about the medicine, it was about being seen. The Van Cess had offered to help her, and Ivy had been overwhelmed by their gratitude. It was more than she had ever expected or hoped for. But it wasn't just the material things that mattered. What she really longed for was the chance to go beyond the walls of the Vance estate, to pursue her dreams, to have a life that wasn't defined by cleaning floors and staying out of sight. And now, it seemed that opportunity was within reach. As she walked through the grand hallway, she passed the family portraits that lined the walls, each one more imposing than the last. She stopped in front of the large painting of Thomas Vance, his stern face frozen in time, a man who had built an empire from nothing. It was hard to imagine him as anything other than the man who ruled over this entire estate. But Ivy had seen another side of him recently. She had seen a man who understood the weight of his own mistakes and was willing to make things right. He had promised her a future, and she knew that he would keep his word. A few days after the incident with the wrong medication, Thomas had invited Ivy into his study. He had told her that he wanted to help her, that he wanted to give her the chance to go to school, to pursue a career, to live a life of her own choosing. Ivy had been speechless. It was an offer she never thought would come her way. "You don't have to be invisible anymore, Ivy," Thomas had said, his voice warm with sincerity. "You've proven yourself to be more than just a maid's daughter. You're someone who can make a real difference." Ivy had felt a lump form in her throat, unable to speak for a moment. She had always dreamed of having the freedom to choose her own path, but she had never imagined it would come from a family like the Van Cess. Now, she was being given the chance to make her dreams a reality. It felt surreal. Veronica, too, had been kind. She had apologized for the way she had treated Ivy in the past, admitting that she had always seen her as nothing more than a servant's child. She had promised that things would be different from now on. "I was wrong about you," Veronica had said, her eyes sincere. "You have so much potential. You deserve more than just this life." As Ivy sat at the dinner table that evening, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The Van Cess had not just given her an opportunity, they had given her dignity. They had shown her that, despite her background, she could be more than the sum of her circumstances. For the first time in her life, Ivy felt like she had a future worth fighting for. But as the evening wore on, a small part of her still wondered, could she really trust them? Could the Van Cess, with their world of wealth and privilege, really understand what it meant to live a life like hers? As the laughter and conversation flowed around her, Ivy pushed the doubts aside. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that anything was possible. And as she looked around the table, she realized that this was just the beginning. She wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. She was Ivy, and she was finally ready to claim her place in the world. Ivy had barely begun to process the whirlwind of emotions she was feeling when the call came. It was late in the evening, and she had just finished cleaning the Vance estate's massive dining room, her mind still tangled with the kindness Thomas and Veronica had shown her. She had been given a chance to build a future, to make something of herself, but now she was being thrust into a new reality that was hard to fully grasp. The phone rang, and she picked it up, startled. "Hello, Ivy," came a voice on the other end. It was Thomas. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Ivy's heart raced. "No, Mr. Vance, not at all," she replied, quickly trying to steady her nerves. "Good, Thomas continued. I wanted to speak with you about something important. We've been discussing your future, and we think it's time you had the opportunity to do more than just cleaning and housekeeping. We want to help you, Ivy. We want you to go to school, to receive an education. Ivy could hardly believe what she was hearing. You mean school? Like an actual school? She asked, her voice shaking. Yes, Thomas said with a warm laugh. We've already started looking into schools that can offer you a scholarship. It's time to give you the life you deserve. Ivy stood there, stunned. She never thought something like this would happen to her. For so long, she had been invisible to everyone except the other workers in the estate, and now she was being offered the chance to learn, to change the course of her life forever. She felt a flood of gratitude. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Vance, she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. You don't have to thank me, he replied. You've earned this, Ivy. We'll make sure you have everything you need to succeed. As the conversation ended, Ivy stood in the middle of the room, her mind racing. She had been given a gift that so many would dream of, and it felt as though her whole life was changing in an instant. But even as hope filled her heart, a small seed of doubt began to grow. Could she really fit into this new world? Could she, the daughter of a maid, truly belong in a world of privilege and education? She had spent so much of her life feeling small, unimportant. Now, she was being asked to step into a new role, one she wasn't sure she was ready for. But as the days passed, Ivy's doubts slowly began to fade. She could feel herself changing, growing stronger with each passing moment. The Vances were not just offering her an education. They were offering her the chance to be someone. It was a chance that many would never have, and she wasn't about to waste it. Her first day at the new school came quickly. The uniform felt strange on her body, so different from the old clothes she had worn while cleaning. As she entered the school gates, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This was her moment. This was her chance to prove to herself, and to the world, that she could do more than just what she had been born into. She walked into the classroom, the air thick with anticipation. She was no longer the invisible girl in the background. She was Ivy, and she was finally going to take control of her destiny. Ivy stood at the entrance of the school, the weight of her new uniform feeling both alien and exhilarating. Her heart pounded in her chest, but there was something else too, hope. For the first time in her life, she was stepping into a world that was so different from the one she had known. She wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. She was Ivy, a student with a chance to prove herself. As she walked through the school gates, she tried to steady her nerves. The sound of her footsteps echoed on the pavement, and the towering buildings around her seemed so imposing. She had never been around so many people with so much confidence. But something inside her urged her forward. Ivy took a deep breath and walked through the hallways, trying to ignore the whispers that followed her as she passed. The students here were all so different from her, privileged, well-dressed, and seemingly confident in their place. Ivy had never felt so out of place, but she reminded herself that she deserved to be here. She wasn't just a servant's child anymore. She was someone with a future. Her first class was English, and as she walked in, she noticed the looks from the other students. Some stared curiously, others looked her up and down, whispering behind their hands. Ivy could feel the heat of their judgment, but she held her head high, refusing to let it shake her. The teacher, Mrs. Parker, greeted her with a warm smile. You must be Ivy, she said, her voice friendly. Welcome to the class. Please take a seat. Ivy nodded, trying to ignore the knot in her stomach as she took a seat at the back of the room. She was used to being in the background, but today, she wasn't going to hide. Mrs. Parker started the lesson, speaking about classic literature, and Ivy listened intently. She had always loved books, but she never had the chance to read the kind of literature her classmates seemed to take for granted. As the lesson progressed, Ivy felt herself getting lost in the words, her mind opening up to a world she had only dreamed of. After class, Ivy gathered her things, feeling a mix of excitement and exhaustion. She was still new, still an outsider, but something had shifted inside her. She could do this. She belonged here. As she walked out into the courtyard, she was approached by a group of girls. They were well-dressed, with confident smiles, and Ivy couldn't help but feel a little intimidated. Hey, Ivy, right? One of them asked, her tone casual. Ivy nodded, a little unsure of what to say. We heard about you, the girl continued. You're the maid's daughter, right? Pretty brave to be here, don't you think? Ivy's heart skipped a beat. She had expected this. People would talk, judge her, but she wasn't going to let it get to her. She straightened up, meeting the girl's eyes. "I'm here because I belong here," she said, her voice steady. The girl raised an eyebrow, but smiled. "I like that. We'll see how long you last." Ivy wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a challenge, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going anywhere. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Ivy spent the hours learning, adjusting to the rhythm of her new life. She was still an outsider, but the gap was closing. She was learning, growing, and most importantly, believing in herself. When the final bell rang, Ivy walked out of the school building, her steps more confident than when she had entered. As she headed home, she couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning. She had a future now, a future she was determined to make her own. Ivy woke up the next morning with a new sense of purpose. The first few days at her new school had been overwhelming, but she was starting to find her rhythm. She was no longer the invisible girl in the background. She was a student now, someone with a future ahead of her. She got dressed quickly in her uniform, looking at herself in the mirror for a moment. She had never worn clothes like this before, neatly pressed, fitted to her body in a way that made her feel a little more confident. As she walked to the kitchen, she was greeted by the smell of breakfast, but it was the sight of her mother's tired face that caught her attention. "Morning, Mom," Ivy said softly, sitting down at the table. "How are you feeling today?" Her mother, who had spent so many years working tirelessly to support them both, looked up with a faint smile. "I'm fine, honey. Just another day. How was school yesterday?" Ivy smiled, feeling a sense of pride. "It was good. A little nerve-wracking at first, but I think I'm starting to fit in." Her mother's eyes softened, her smile widening. "I knew you would. You're special, Ivy. Never forget that." Ivy nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She had always known her mother believed in her, but hearing those words now, after everything that had happened, made them feel more real than ever. As Ivy ate her breakfast, her thoughts turned back to school. The first day had been tough, but it was a new day. She could already feel the weight of the challenges ahead, but there was also a spark of excitement. The other students still stared at her from time to time, their whispers never far behind, but Ivy wasn't bothered by it as much as she had been. She was beginning to realize that their opinions didn't define her. She was here because she belonged, not because anyone else had decided it for her. Later that morning, she walked into the classroom, ready to take on the day. Mrs. Parker smiled at her as she entered, gesturing to the empty seat. Ivy took her place, and the lesson began. This time, however, something was different. Ivy wasn't just absorbing the material, she was engaging with it. She raised her hand during discussions, contributing ideas that surprised even herself. Her classmates, who had once looked at her with skepticism, began to nod along with her answers. She wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. She was Ivy, someone who had something valuable to say. At lunch, a few of the students who had been so quick to judge her now approached her with curiosity. "Hey, Ivy, right?" one of the girls asked, the same one who had spoken to her a few days earlier. Ivy nodded, looking up from her lunch. "Yeah." The girl smiled, her tone lighter. "I have to admit, I didn't think you'd last this long. But you're actually pretty smart." Ivy didn't know how to respond at first. The words stung a little. There was still that hint of condescension, but she was learning to ignore it. "Thanks," she said, offering a small smile. "I'm here to learn, just like everyone else." The girl's smile widened. "Well, you're doing great. Keep it up." Ivy felt a rush of pride. It wasn't much, but it was progress. For the first time, she was starting to feel like she belonged. The rest of the day flew by. After class, she headed home, her mind buzzing with excitement. She couldn't wait to tell her mother about the small victory she had just won. As she walked through the door, her mother greeted her with a warm hug. "How was today?" she asked eagerly. Ivy beamed. "It was great. I feel like I'm actually getting the hang of it." Her mother's eyes shone with pride. "I knew you could do it, Ivy. You're amazing." Ivy felt a rush of emotion. She had a long road ahead of her, and she knew there would be more challenges along the way. But for the first time, she felt ready. She wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. She was Ivy, a girl with a future, and she was going to make the most of it. Ivy's days at school became a blur of new experiences and unexpected triumphs. The nervousness she had once felt at the thought of stepping into a new world started to fade. Every new lesson, every challenge, made her stronger, more confident. Her classmates, who had once viewed her with skepticism, were beginning to see her for who she was. Not the maid's daughter, but a student with a bright future. The real test, however, came a few weeks later when a surprise announcement shook the school. The principal, Mr. Harrison, called all students into the auditorium for a special assembly. Ivy sat among the crowd, her mind racing with thoughts. What could this be about? As the principal stepped onto the stage, his voice echoed through the room. We are proud to announce a new scholarship opportunity for our most outstanding students. This scholarship is not just for academic excellence, but for those who show great potential in leadership, kindness, and resilience. The recipient will receive a full scholarship to a prestigious university, as well as a mentorship from one of the most successful business leaders in the country. Ivy's heart skipped a beat. This was the opportunity she had always dreamed of, but she never thought it would come so soon. As Mr. Harrison continued, he explained that the scholarship would be awarded to one student who had demonstrated remarkable growth and dedication. He called the first name, and the recipient of the scholarship is... Ivy's breath caught in her throat. This could change everything for her. Her future could be secured. Ivy Johnson, Mr. Harrison said, his voice carrying through the room. For a moment, everything was silent. Ivy felt the eyes of every student in the room on her. She couldn't believe it. Her name had just been called. She stood slowly, her legs trembling, but her heart was racing with excitement. She walked to the stage, feeling as though the world had suddenly shifted beneath her feet. As she accepted the award, she glanced at her classmates, who now looked at her with respect, admiration, and even awe. This was the moment she had worked for, the moment that proved she wasn't just the maid's daughter, but a person who had the right to dream big. As Ivy stood before the audience, holding the scholarship certificate in her hands, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. From the quiet girl in the corner of the Vance estate to this moment of triumph, she had proven to herself and to the world that she had a place in this new life she had worked so hard to build. The applause around her felt like a wave lifting her higher, a signal that she had finally found her place in the world. Her mother, who had been sitting quietly in the back of the auditorium, stood with tears in her eyes, clapping proudly. Ivy caught her eye and smiled, knowing that this victory wasn't just hers, it was theirs. Together, they had overcome every obstacle, every moment of doubt, and now, Ivy's future was bright. The scholarship was more than just a ticket to a university. It was proof that no matter where you came from, you could rise above your circumstances. Ivy had earned this moment, and she knew it was only the beginning. As she walked off the stage, the weight of the world felt lighter, and for the first time, Ivy truly believed that her dreams were within reach. Ivy sat in her new dorm room, staring out of the window at the bustling campus below. It was a warm autumn afternoon, and the sound of students chatting, walking between classes, and laughing filled the air. She had just finished her first week at university, and everything still felt surreal. She had come so far from the quiet girl working in the Vance estate, and now, she was here, living her dream. The scholarship had been a turning point, but the journey had only just begun. Ivy had been welcomed with open arms by her professors and fellow students. She had made friends, people who saw her for who she was, not where she came from. She had begun to excel in her courses, her confidence growing with every new lesson learned. Yet, despite all the progress, there were moments when she found herself questioning whether she truly belonged. Her past, the life she had left behind, was still a part of her, a part that she couldn't entirely escape. The memories of working in the mansion, of being treated as invisible, would sometimes resurface, reminding her of the vast gulf between her former life and the one she was building now. But then she remembered her mother, and the sacrifices they had both made to get here. She remembered the Vances, who had given her the chance to change her life. And she remembered the young girl who had been afraid to speak up, but did so anyway. Ivy smiled to herself. She had proven to herself that she wasn't just a product of her circumstances. She was Ivy, and she had a future ahead of her. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from her mother. "How are you, sweetheart? I'm so proud of you. I know you'll do great things." Ivy's heart swelled with love for her mother, and she quickly typed a response. "I'm doing great, Mom. Thank you for everything. This is just the beginning." She hit send and leaned back in her chair, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over her. As she looked out at the students below, she knew that her journey was far from over. There would be challenges, doubts, and setbacks, but she was ready for them. She had come this far because she had never given up on herself, and she wasn't about to start now. Ivy's future was bright, and for the first time, she truly believed that she could achieve anything. With a determined smile, she grabbed her books and headed to class, ready to take on whatever came next. She wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. She was Ivy, and she was going to make her mark on the world. In this inspiring story, we follow the journey of a young girl who goes from being overlooked and underestimated to achieving her dreams, proving that hard work, courage, and determination can change a person's life forever. As she navigates the challenges of school, overcoming doubts and judgment from others, she discovers her true potential and earns a scholarship that will change her future. This is not just another tale of success. It's one of the most heartwarming millionaire stories where kindness, courage, and hard work make all the difference. The young girl, once a maid's daughter, takes center stage in a world of privilege, showing that no matter where you come from, anyone can rise above their circumstances. Like many millionaire stories, this narrative is a testament to the power of believing in yourself and seizing opportunities when they come your way. As she faces challenges, Ivy proves that dreams are achievable and that the true value of success is in the journey, not the destination. In these millionaire stories, we often find that the most inspiring triumphs come from the most unexpected places, as Ivy's story proves. It's a reminder that we all have the power to change our lives and achieve greatness, no matter how humble our beginnings may be. So, if you're looking for motivation and inspiration, look no further than these millionaire stories to remind you that success is not just for the privileged. It's for anyone who dares to dream big and work hard to make those dreams a reality.